Hello and welcome to Editing with My Wife, now with more changes. I'm the Hooded Philosopher and I'm here with Cheesy Loops. Cheesy Loops, what's this episode about?
I have no idea. You just sprung this on me.
Well, the chapter is called Shapeshifter Reborn.
Yeah,
It's very brief and I'm just going to read it to you.
I am excited for this chapter, honestly. Hooded asked me questions about how this chapter was to be about, and I brought up some good ideas.
See what I did with them. In the last chapter, Nathaniel took Ella, Samuel, and the boy on a journey back to Marcus.
Yep.
And, what was I thinking?
Came upon a gruesome
And
sight.
they came upon a gruesome sight. He asked the boy if he wanted to see the sight. The boy didn't really answer, so he just took the boy across as quickly as he could, keeping his eyes covered and everything. And then dropped him off with Marcus and came back to see if Samuel and Ella and make sure they don't need any help. Then when they entered the gruesome sight, I guess Nathaniel wasn't really looking to see the gruesomeness, and when he did, it wasn't the gruesomeness that caught his eye. It was the seed of chaos. This misty form hiding in a crater is just these gnashing, twisting teeth, terrifying sight. And probably just about lost his mind. But he had the captain, Ella, from the rebellion here, and Ella knew what she was doing and got him through it. And
Ella is awesome.
they caught up to Marcus, and then she learned that Nathaniel has given up the ability to impose order. And that's kind of vague, but that's what it is. So the shapeshifter concept comes from a book.
Ooh.
You know, it comes from a book I've written. This character comes from a book I have not written.
Yes.
Draylin is a character in another story of mine.
Yes.
And I borrowed him for this story because I thought it would be fun to have two different people from two separate worlds kind of come together on this strange place.
Mm-hmm.
And so what do you remember about the shapeshifting in that world?
Okay, so what I remember of shapeshifting from that world actually comes from Sinlow and Thacket.
Well, neither one of... Oh, I guess, yeah, I wrote a little story about them, and they did some shapeshifting. How did they shapeshift?
They kind of became a pool of water.
Really quickly.
And then reformed themselves.
Like, really quick. Just, like, dropped onto a splash of water, just reforms after it splashes.
And it kind of reminds me of Odo.
Yes. From Star Trek.
From Deep Space
Although
Nine.
his shapeshifting was a little more solid in its fluidity.
And slow.
And slow. Yes, this was like instantaneous, but it looks like they just splashed and came back. I like the idea of that at least. But that was in that world.
Yes.
And in that world he was just an animal, basically. An animal with a mind.
And he very much seems to be frustrated to be human.
Because he's not ever been it before, right?
Yeah.
He's only been the animal and he has to change constantly. Well, let's start chapter 23, Shapeshifter Reborn. Draylin had finished carving the necessary runes on his arms. He touched on his crafter's glass and the power flowed through him, the runes lighting up. His bones cracked, his flesh compressed, and the feathers came popping out of him until he was a rather large black bird. And he took to the air, the water between the island he was on and the continent was really rather small. Off towards the sun was a sand as far as the eye could see. On the other side, massive glacial cliffs. He could see everything on the ground. Forces and flows, cities were obvious, massive bridges over deep canyons, and the mountainous archipelago the river came from, some hills around a crater that surrounded a large, ostentatious building he knew to be the school, where all the children were being held. Above that was quite a sight. A massive spiral of a building jutted out of the plains above it. Outlined in gold, the brilliant white building spoke of insight. The curves of the spiral spoke of change. He was above the school. There were 4 towers around a main structure. The dark building had an ominous feeling about it. He landed on the top of the tower, peering into the grounds of the school, yielded to nothing but little humans talking amongst themselves. He flew back high up into the sky. His enhanced animal view allowed him to pick out a high wall protecting a black castle imposing itself over a small city, itself surrounded by a high wall. It was deep. It was in the intense heat of the sun that just hung there. Between the infernal city and the gilded alabaster spiral tower was a pit. Intensely black filaments stretched out of it malevolently, as if appearing suddenly. A mountain came into view. It was impossibly high. It towered above him mid-flight. At the top was covered in a kind of reflected light that seemed to move with intent. Below that, he recognized the place where it all started, Thram and Synth's towers. He followed the path until a glimmer caught his eye. It was Warren. He was with the boy, sitting on his lap. He landed on the magical moving carriage. "Oh, Draylen, it's good to see you. How are you this sunny afternoon?" Warren thought to him nonchalantly. "Warren, it is good to know that you are well." "It's good you showed up. These people are kind of heading for doom." It sat up and sat up on the boy's lap and licked its paw. Sloane wasn't very happy about how it all went down. "He's coming with an army." Draylen thought back. "Where can I get some magics?" The cat leapt off the boy's lap and said, "I bet Sloane's army has some. Let's use theirs, yes?" Draylen snatched up the cat. It screamed and hissed in protest, but Warren said nothing about it. Eventually they arrived at a rather large group of people. Sloane had gathered near a small tower. They were wearing gilded white robes. He placed the cat carefully in a nearby tree, its glimmering eyes finally able to relax from the stress of the flight. He landed out further, looking for any sign of anything he could use, as he was becoming dangerously low on crafter's glass. In the tower was his prize. All of them, save for any divine slivers, sat open on a table. The festivities were about to begin. Draylen had other plans. Sloane was commanding his troops. His voice came out loudly to address them all. He took advantage of the distraction and flew in. He was alone, so he changed back into his human form and began a period of intense gluttony, consuming all magic in sight. After he had his fill, he made quite a commotion by destroying the rest. He got some hooded people's attention. This got some hooded people's attention, and they turned around and ran in to a bird fluttering out of the tower. Draylen flew out, eyeing a large boulder on a nearby hill. It broke the sound barrier as it crashed through the crowd of the white robes, sending bodies flying in all directions. An intense wave of sadness emanated from the bird, causing many of them to weep openly on their falling to their knees. Thousands of oversized caltrops appeared over the crowd. They fell crunching bones and compressing flesh. In a matter of moments, Sloane's little army was gone. He returned to the tree, setting down on the limb with Warren. "Do you want me to carry you back to the boy?" he asked. "I'll find my way back. Thank you. Besides, I need to do something while I'm here. You go on ahead."
Wow. He did a big thing.
Kind of. I think it needs to maybe be rewritten because he is using multiple at a time.
Uh-oh.
But he doesn't need to. He could turn out, it could not become a bird anymore, or something about the crafter's glass is different.
Well, or because he's in bird, it's natural to him.
Yeah, it could be something like that. But it's not really Sloane's army. Those were actually some very powerful men that were going to try and take the boy before the rebellion could get to the force's encampment. But he doesn't know that. He doesn't care. "Smush them all," he said. "Get rid of the problem." Warren helping out too, barely.
Oh, wow.
It's a brief little thing about what happened, because he took the time to carve it into his arm, and then this is what he was doing otherwise. In fact, he goes back to the boy before revealing himself.
Yeah.
He sits there as a bird talking to a cat, and the boy doesn't know it, and his chapter reflects it. He's there in the chapter. It's very confusing for the boy because the bird takes the cat. He just takes off with it, but then he figures it out when Draylen shows up. So.
Okay, so scroll back up.
It's very brief too, because it's not that's the thing that happened. It's a lot of travel for him, so it just took a long time, and now everyone has had a chance to do what they're doing. And actually, he's not done. Yeah, he's not done. He's got other places to go, but we had to switch perspectives real quick.
And he sees Rohan's castle.
And he sees all the landmarks.
He sees all the major. So it's really kind of small, this little strip.
It's very little land. It's probably the size of like maybe Europe.
Okay.
Not even that.
Not that big.
Yeah, not very big.
Um.
And I mean, a massive wall of ice to one side and endless burning sands to the other doesn't really give you much room to stretch. So they're cramped into this little space as this alien life form tows its planet into a more habitable position. Using magic.
Well, you don't really, you know that they're trying to move in your head as the writer, you know they're trying to move the planet, and you're not really sure yourself as to why. It could be that there's going to be the sun's going to explode, so they're trying to move it to another solar system, and
it's a big, complicated, high sci-fi fantasy kind of nonsense.
But I mean, it's
trash, one could say.
Or something someone else can.
Well, one man's trash is another man's treasure.
Build off of as the idea of this race moving their planet. Well, there's parasites growing on the outside.
And we are the parasites too. Isn't that interesting?
We are the parasites.
We are the parasites.
I like how the cat screamed and hissed in protest, but Warren didn't do anything.
Because he's not the cat. And I'm trying to make that clear.
It's like two minds in one body.
It's when the cat took the sliver of the divine, one of the ways we could say it is it became the divine's intent. So it just does what the divine asks. And the only way it can communicate with people is with an understanding, a voice, a kind of consciousness. So it used Warren. Because he made that mistake. Warren the Valiant.
Scroll down a little bit.
Not much left.
You say he turns back into human form and then does magic.
He does. He takes the. He flies into the tower because they're all distracted by Sloane speaking. Turns into a human. Takes all the magic he possibly can. Consumes it all. Destroys everything else and flies out the window.
So he's not really using two at once.
I would say what we could argue is that Crafter's Glass it's like a switch. It flips to a bird, and then he can do the stuff as the bird, and then it flips back to the human, and he can do stuff as a human. But he is the same thing, it's just a different body.
Yeah.
And the Crafter's Glass is allowing that to happen. I mean, he's still a neurotic little freak. Psycho.
And I think we have this added ability with Draylen being a shapeshifter.
Yeah, and he's super powerful. I mean, he in his own right has the power to do a lot.
Whereas a human who's never shapeshifted before would feel unnerved by being another animal at the same time, and then trying to use magic.
Pretty much any other person besides someone from another world would probably take a lot of emotional distress from killing a bunch of people with like intent, just like murdering relentlessly.
Yeah.
Nobody really does that, but if it's not your world, it's kind of like Sloane's interpretation too.
It's like he's playing a video game.
Yeah. Yeah. Maybe Sloane thinks he's doing that too. So the bad guy isn't a bad guy, he's just playing the game. And he thinks he's winning, and he doesn't realize how much he's not winning. But the shape-shifting aspect is... I mean, it comes almost specifically from that book. It's just, granted, there's a whole magic for it, but...
Yeah, there's a whole magic for it, but for Draylen, it's like a second skin. Yeah. It's not a thing he has to get used to. Where other people would have to learn how the body moves and flies and all that stuff. Draylen just knows because he's been that way before.
He's been that way pretty much his whole life. He's been an animal like that.
He doesn't have to learn how to get the right uplift? How much do I have to push? No, it's
familiar.
It is his second skin. It's actually his only skin. His first skin. His human skin is his second skin. And you can tell by the way he talks and the way he communicates with people and the way he...
You can tell by the way he walks.
By the way he talks. What's the rest of that?
Is it a ladies' man? I don't remember.
I have no idea.
It's an old classic. I don't know. I don't listen to music. I live in fantasy worlds. I make the music in there.
The other thing, too, he gets to do here, as an animal, is something he wishes he could do in his own world.
Oh, heck yeah. Just fly around destroying the Tarkaron. Heck yeah.
Is be able to fully defend those he cares for.
Yeah.
In
really
that
hard
form.
in his world. Really hard. I would say bordering fruitless in his world.
Yeah.
Like it's really not worth it to a lot of his kind. He's actually different in a lot of ways because of that. You know, living with one person, trying to have a life in some way together. It's not normal for them. It's animals.
Well, he has 2 kids. That seems to be...
One on the way.
it seems to be maybe even rare in that world to have 2.
Any kids. Yeah, to have any kids. As a man. It's the ladies that have the kids. Men just give their seed. They're animals.
To try to propagate their race.
Yeah, so they don't die off, just like every other animal. Survival of the fittest. The strong people's greatest excuse.
No, there's not much to say in here. I don't feel like I hear anything that was stumbly.
You did see how he changed.
Almost like the werewolf cracking kind of thing, yeah.
Freaking feathers popping out of him. What is this? What is this? Very different for him, and he does comment on it, of course. Just not in the moment because there's no one to comment to.
Yeah. Though was a rather large black bird. Rather large black bird. You have a comma there that doesn't need to be there. That's all I'm saying. No, you just have a comma.
No, I'm going to change something.
Oh. Rather colorful. Hawked. Oh, hawk.
And the color. That's better.
Rather small. Oh, I didn't see that. The continent was really rather small, of toward the sun.
Off. I corrected that and didn't think about it.
Okay. Up, right below colorful. Right below where your cursor is. There you go. No, I think
And actually,
fine.
it should be like that, shouldn't it? Oif!
Yes. Off towards the sun, the sand as far as the eye can see. On the other side, yeah. Yep. Little humans talking amongst themselves. Just little ones. No big
Yeah,
humans.
just gibbering.
Yeah.
That's what children do in schools, right? They just gibber. I don't know why I did that. Let's go back to recap.
Question of the chapter. The only thing I can think of to question. What animal would you want to shapeshift into first?
If you were an animorph, that's the right word, right?
Animorph, yeah.
What animal would you morph into?
Whoa.
What would you morph into? Cheesy? Would it be a cheesy loops?
No, because it's not an animal. I think a bird would be fun. To be able to fly around. See things from a different perspective. Though a dog or a cat would be cool because you get to lay around all day and play.
I think I would become a tardigrade.
You be teeny tiny little thing?
And just float around forever. That sounds comfy. No worrying about taxes. I could just write in my head forever.
Tardigrade it up. Drayling crack into a familiar shape. Drayling explores the world. Looks in the school. Then...
No. This is just...
saves the boy.
Yeah, that's what he was doing up there. Oh, we could do this.
Then saves the boy from the fight. Looks in the school, saves the boy from the fight. Okay.
Alright. Interest. That's when your int takes a sleep.
Looks in the school at nothing of interest.
Yeah, because there's nothing of interest in schools. At all. 0 things of interest in schools.
Yeah, there is. The opposite gender. Or the same gender. You never know.
Or a transgender.
Thank you so much for listening.
We love you all.
Have a good day.
Like, comment, subscribe. Tell us what you shift into. Thank you. Bye.
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 Bye bye.
Bye bye.